great-grandfather was 41 on January 23rd, 1943, when he stepped onto the Dorchester. On January 29th, they were excited to be stopping in Newfoundland, and that's where most of them learned that they were being followed. On February 2nd, a storm hit. And then at 1 o'clock in the morning, approximately, on February 3rd, the 223, the German sub, popped up just for a second. And even though there was a shortage of ammunition in Germany, instead of shooting just one torpedo, it shot 3. It cut the Dorchester almost in half. It went right through to the engine room. When the ship was hit, men who ran upstairs in their underwear, in the confusion, they couldn't find anything in their rooms because there were so many people in the rooms, they ran to their doom. My great-grandfather did die that night. It was the 3rd worst ship disaster in World War II history. They saved about 200 men out of the close to 1,000, and my great-grandfather was not one of them. But there were 4 chaplains on board that ship. George Fox, he was a Methodist minister. Rabbi Alexander Good, he was a Jewish rabbi. Clark Poling was a Dutch reformist, a form of Protestantism. And Father John Washington, he was a Catholic. And at that time in our history, people of different religions didn't talk to each other. And it was a shock for all of the men on board. The survivors all reported how they themselves kept separate. They kept separate by their nationalities. They kept separate by their religions. But along came these 4 men who showed them what we were supposed to be doing, which was being good to each other. They walked around together. They tried to lift the spirits of the men together. But the thing that's the most amazing part about what they did that night, they were the ones who found 2 boxes of life preservers because most of the men had left theirs below deck. The men formed lines and they passed them out. When they ran out of life jackets, there were still men in line. So these 4 chaplains took off their own life preserver and gave it to the last 4 men in line. One of the privates started to run downstairs because he forgot his gloves and he knew that he couldn't survive without his gloves. And the rabbi stopped him and asked him where he was going. And he said, I have to get my gloves. I know I won't survive in this water without my gloves. And the rabbi said, here, take mine. I brought an extra pair. And later the private, during interviews, because he was saved, said, now I realize that there was not a second pair of gloves. Just my whole life, I just heard that my great-grandfather was lost at sea. The telegram first said that he was lost at sea in Africa, off of the coast of Africa, and then it came back with that he was in the Atlantic. My grandmother threw away nothing, so I have a lot of his things. I have one of those stamps in my living room, but she had nothing but good things to say about him.
Thank you, Sharon.